Welcome to Flashback, a podcast by the Okaloosa County Public Information Office. Get ready to dust the nostalgia off your sleeve as we talk with Okaloosa citizens who share with us how things used to be. I'm your host, Nick Tomachek. It's time to step into your imaginary DeLorean, tap your flux capacitor, and flash back.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Flashback. Okaloosa County is unique in so many ways. Heck, our name Okaloosa, which means black water, is pretty unique. We have the largest Air Force base in the world, land-wise. We have both gorgeous beaches and a large swath of old Florida woodlands. We have pretty much everything your outdoor adventure heart could desire: hunting, camping, the beach, scuba diving, canoeing, paddleboarding, fishing, boating, the list goes on. Another unique part of our county is the City of Laurel Hill. It incorporated in 1905, and the 3-square-mile Laurel Hill is the county's oldest city. It's a quiet place, low-key in my opinion, and it has the feel of the happiness that surrounds what you might think of when you think small rural town in America. It sits just a hop and a skip away from the Alabama state line along State Road 85, and is one place in the county that will get snow on occasion in the winter. One thing that sticks out to me, and probably many outsiders that travel through town on 85, is the mascot associated with the school. There's a sign in front of the school, or out near the school, on State Road 85 that says, "Laurel Hill is the home of the hobos." When I moved here in 2005, I was both surprised and curious about this. This isn't your typical tigers, gators, wildcats kind of mascot. So why the hobos? And what is a hobo? It wasn't until I began going to basketball games and other events back then as a photographer for the local newspaper that I discovered that this is an endearing part of the town's identity. I did a little digging about the history of both the word hobo and the people that were given this label, and my history geek mind was blown almost immediately. According to the news website howstuffworks.com, the very first American hobos were cast-offs from the American Civil War of the 1860s. When the soldiers returned homes, there weren't a whole lot of jobs for them to have, so a bunch of young men took to the newly built railroads to find their fortunes. During the war, the railroads were built to carry troops and equipment across the country in a short period of time, so as the railroads kept expanding, so did the culture of the hobos. The word hobo is hardly used anymore except in groups across the country that celebrate this part of American history. They work to make sure that the people that were called hobos are not forgotten. But the name hobo is believed to be a shortened form of ho boy, as in H-O-E, as in the garden tool. There's some argument among historians on the origin of the name hobo, but ho boy was the most agreed upon name from the online sources I came across. Did you all know that at the height of the hobo heydays, there is some evidence that a hobo code was created? Since many hobos were illiterate, they developed a system of signs, scrawled on fence posts and train crossings and bridges, almost kind of like a high-level graffiti to communicate information to fellow travelers. Like a picture of a bird indicated a free telephone. A cross signified a free meal if you profess religious belief. You can find some of these drawings online, and it turns out that back then these drawings, which, like I said, look like graffiti, were dated as well. That was the custom, to date your drawing. The hobo code may have also extended into etiquette for those hobos traveling the rails. They did not break into boxcars. It was considered rude and disrespectful to the people who ran the trains. And also, if you have a bunch of people breaking into locked trains, the railroad companies would increase security, something someone hitching a ride probably wouldn't want around. And did you know that hobos still exist today, but in a more glorified, respectful way that helps tell their stories, who weren't often regarded in more wealthy American societies? Every August, hundreds of hobos and hobo aficionados from across America gather in Britt, Iowa for the National Hobo Convention. This is also the place where the National Hobo Cemetery is. The convention has been held in this little area since 1900, when the town fathers welcomed 3 Chicago hobos that were looking for a new home for their annual get-together. I wondered if there were a lot of hobos in Laurel Hill back in the day, and maybe that's why the town is known for the home of the hobos. I reached out to Ann Spann, who's the director of the Baker Block Museum, which has a treasure trove of North Okaloosa County history. Check it out. Go to the Baker Block Museum. They got all kinds of artifacts, of course, like most museums, but you can also do things like research your family genealogy for free. They have a subscription to some of those services. Anne referred me to a board member of the North Okaloosa Historical Association. Her name is Tracy Curenton. Her family's been living and working in Laurel Hill for generations. Tracy and her brother wrote a book on the history of Laurel Hill, and she has an uncle who was around during the time the town school adopted the hobo mascot in the late 1940s.
My name's Tracy Curenton. My great-grandfather moved here to Laurel Hill in 1898. When the town was incorporated, he served as the first mayor. He and his brother owned a general store here, Campbell Company, and our family's been in this area for many generations. Actually, there probably was not a particularly large presence in Laurel Hill simply because the railroad that came through Laurel Hill was just a short spur railroad that just went from Crestview to Florala. It started off primarily just for transporting logs, and so it wouldn't be a railroad that people would travel along that much looking for work. Though there were plenty of people that did come into Laurel Hill looking for work at the various sawmills and turpentine camps that were around here.
Yeah.
But the hobos would have been more along the L&N Railroad that ran east and west across northwest Florida. Laurel Hill was founded as it was originally a logging camp. The Yellow River Railroad was built to access timber that was in this area so that they could then transport it to Crestview to then be transported to the larger mills that they could reach. And so it was very much a company town. It was the headquarters of the Yellow River Railroad, and which was then sold out to L&N and became a division of the L&N Railroad. The town boomed in the late 1880s, 1890s, up through about the time of the First World War, when pretty much the timber had all been cut. They turned around and sold off land as farmland after that, and it became an agricultural area. Laurel Hill was first incorporated in 1905, which makes it the oldest incorporated town in Okaloosa County. At one time was the largest town in Okaloosa County. And when Okaloosa County was formed in 1915, Laurel Hill was the only town that had a bank at that time, and it became the county bank, was here at the Bank of Laurel Hill. They lost out in being the county seat because Crestview was more centrally located and was considered a better site. At that time, after that, Laurel Hill didn't really decline in population, but it didn't grow anymore. It was just a local farming area and a farming town. But it did have, vibrant businesses, churches, the school, and continued that, and it's still a, very community-minded area, though most of that business and all has faded away now. My brother Mark and I wrote this history of Laurel Hill so that the history would be remembered, because Laurel Hill really was such an important town in the founding of this area. And the people who knew it firsthand, are not around anymore, and all that history is going to be lost if we don't put it down for future generations. I grew up hearing these stories because my family had been here for years. These are the stories I heard about. There's stories in here about the bank being robbed, and an uncle of mine was there at the time. There are stories in here about some community murders, and I grew up hearing about, what happened when so-and-so got shot and all those kind of stories. And we really wanted to be able to share that with our community and preserve that history that goes with this community.
Tracy's knowledge and love of her hometown is refreshing. I'm glad she was able to speak with me, and even though there probably weren't a lot of hobos on that spur railroad line in Laurel Hill that she talked about, I'm sure hobos found their way from the L&N line in Crestview to do some logging work in Laurel Hill. It sounds like hobos were looking for work all over the country. But why was Laurel Hill's mascot named after hobos, if there weren't that many hobos up there? Well, you remember I said Tracy had an uncle who was around during that time the mascot was adopted. Well, I got in touch with his daughter Susan, and she set me up to talk with her dad, Danny Campbell.
I'm Danny Campbell, and I was a senior on the basketball team the year they adopted the hobo as our name mascot. It came about that the coach we had, I think he was second year there, and we were practicing in the auditorium or the gym. Laurel Hill, one of the few schools in the county, and even there in our classic, it had an indoor gym. But we were practicing that afternoon, and I guess being after lunch, we were kind of dragging around. The coach got a little aggravated with us, trying to pep us up, and he made the remark that said, "Get some pep," something to that effect, says, "You're dragging around like a bunch of hobos." Well, that was what got us started. We were in the process of trying to come up with a name. He was pushing us to come up with a name. So that got mulled around us. We couldn't decide on a name anyway. After he made that remark, we decided, well, maybe that was, and it got talked around, and the senior class president and the star athlete was Leroy Bryan. He kind of took the lead and pushed that, and the school adopted it. That was in 1948. So that's how it came to be. You know, there's been some administrations that wanted to change it, but didn't get very far. The student bodies up there resisted it, than changing the name to something more sophisticated. So I was a member of the team. I was there when he made that remark. There wasn't many automobiles available to the team members. We didn't have our own vehicles and all that like they do now. And so we did lots of hitchhiking to Furlough to Crestview. So we thought that name kind of sounded appropriate to us, and all our hitchhiking kind of fit us. So
that's not. Yeah, I guess that's not something that kids are doing these days anymore. That's pretty interesting. I hadn't heard that before. That's pretty good.
We didn't have any connection with the hobos on the train. Of course, the train did run through Laurel Hill, but there wasn't a passenger service or anything like that. And might have been a few hobos came through there sometime previous years, but the name came about, and that's from the coach just made that remark, and I think it's a little bit of sarcasm, and I think we adopted it kind of in retaliation to his comment.
So essentially, a remark, sarcastic remark from a coach, and a bunch of teenage boys wanting to kind of stick it to the man, as it were, is the reason that Laurel Hill is the home of the hobos, I guess.
Yeah, so, and that's how it all came about. That's a casual comment that was really, well, I was kind of proud of it since I was one of the first team that was hobos.
Laurel Hill had a Hobo Fest for years and was a gathering for the people who lived in the town, a relatively small affair with food, music, and games for kids. It was at events like the Hobo Fest and Laurel Hill School sporting events, namely basketball, that I got my first look at the real-life mascot, the hobo himself, Reverend Mike McVeigh. He was dressed in an old suit jacket with patches sewn to look older and worn. He has a pair of overalls, a fedora hat, and the telltale stick with his hobo belongings attached to the end. Reverend Mike's also the pastor of First Baptist Church in Laurel Hill. I reached out to him on the phone to talk about why he likes playing the role of the hobo for the town and school.
Well, I came here as pastor at First Baptist Church back in December of 2004. And because of my interest has always been reaching young people, and and protecting young people, and just trying to do what I can to help them. And so I immediately got involved with the school there and supporting their activities and things. And in 2005, I guess it would have been, it would have been either late 2004. No, it would have been 2005. At the homecoming, they were fixing to have the homecoming pep rally. And I just, on a whim, I thought, well, I can dress up as a hobo. So I called the coach, the cheerleading coach, who was kind of heading up the homecoming pep rally, and talked to her about the idea, and she liked the idea. And so I got busy and sewed me some patches on some old wore-out jeans, and fixed me up a little suit and got me a stick and dressed up. We planned ahead of time that I would come in right at the last minute, and so because most of the kids knew me, by this time, because I'd spent time over there. So I came in, sat down at the bottom of the bleachers there, and kind of dropped my head. I would take my false teeth out and put on some of my wife's mascara or something, whatever you call that stuff, to paint me off 3 or 4 day growth of beard. And I sat down with my head down, and kids would come by and look and pass on, didn't recognize me. So it was the pep rally began. The coach started the pep rally out, and she said, "Oh, by the way, we need to welcome our special guest. Got a special guest here today. Let's make welcome Hobo. Mr. Hobo, would you stand up and take a bow?" And so I stood up and take a bow. And she said, "Welcome, Mr. Hobo, a.k.a. Pastor Mike McVeigh, First Baptist Church." And all the kids, "Pastor Mike." And so after the pep rally, a lot of the kids came up and said, "Pastor Mike, you gonna wear that to the game tonight?" And I said, I don't know about that now. And they said, "Oh, come on, Pastor Mike, you gotta wear it." And so I said, "Y'all really want me to do that?" They said, "Yeah." So I said, "Okay, if that's what y'all want." And that's all history from there. So I've been doing it since then. So it's been 16 years now.
Yeah, 16. That's incredible. Yeah. On a whim, just decided to. I guess the desire as a pastor to reach kids, you try to think of different ways, and wonder if it was the Lord putting that idea in your mind to go out there and all the time.
There ain't a whole lot of doubt in that.
Yeah.
I don't believe. I believe it was inspiration of the Holy Spirit doing that, because it gives me an opportunity to be with the kids. Of course, I love the kids. I don't try to push anything on them, but I do want to be there for them and let them know that I'm there for them, and I will help them, and I'll protect them, and I'll do anything I can for them, and this gives me an opportunity to do that, The school is small. We are K through 12, and usually graduate somewhere around 30 students, so that tells you about the size of our classes. It's just a great atmosphere, everybody knows everybody, and which to me is a tremendous benefit. I graduated, large school, and in small school, the kids know one another, and I've watched some of our star basketball players, just to give you an illustration, over the years, and how they would take time to kneel down and help a kindergartner, shoot the basketball. Not too big for the little kids, because and they do a lot of mentoring themselves,
Yeah.
in the small school atmosphere there, because they're all, right there together. The high school's in one side of the school, but they're still passing in halls and interacting throughout the day. We're all about basketball. Of course, we're too small. We couldn't take our whole high school and make up a football team. I mean, we don't have enough students to play football, so we don't have football. Basketball is our primary sport, and although we have softball, baseball, volleyball, and they're all important, but basketball seems to be the big thing, and it's very much supported by the community. And it's an exciting time. It's a serious time, when we're playing basketball. It's we love it. I love it. I thank the Lord every day for letting me come to Laurel Hill.
Reverend Mike's passion to serve his community is commendable. I hope the next time you're driving through Laurel Hill and you see the sign, Home of the Hoboes, you think about Laurel Hill's history and the people who live there. And heck, maybe don't just drive through. Stop for a bite to eat at the Laurel Hill Grill. And if you want to see a good basketball game, I'm talking like a Hoosiers type of basketball game surrounded by extremely passionate fans, cross the street and watch a game at the Laurel Hill School. You won't regret it. This episode is written and researched by me, produced by April Sarver, our Public Information Officer. Music is provided by Jason Shaw on Audionautics.com. Special thanks to Reverend Mike and Tracy Curenton and Danny Campbell for their time and stories. I also want to thank Brian Hughes, Ann Spann, and Susan Cassidy for guiding me to them for this episode. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you around town.